The Michigan Masonic Charitable Foundation is the charitable arm of the Masons of Michigan. A subsidiary of the Grand Lodge of Michigan and a partner for local Masonic lodges, the Michigan Masonic Charitable Foundation not only works with Masons in their own times of need, but also helps them give life to the ideals on which Masonry is founded. By providing financial support for locally selected community charities and student scholarships, the Masonic Child Identification Program, and Masonic Pathways, the Michigan Masonic Charitable Foundation empowers local Masonic lodges to make a real difference in the world around them. Ethan LaForme's story is a powerful example of how matching funds from the Michigan Masonic Charitable Foundation can increase the impact a lodge can make in their community through a community charities grant. Ethan was diagnosed with leukemia when he was just 2 years old. Since then, he has undergone extensive treatments that have created many challenges for him and his family, particularly in the form of medical expenses. Here is Ethan's story.
Ethan is probably the most fun and exciting and energetic person I've ever met in my life. He's always full of life, and he loves to be social, loves to be around people, loves everything.
Ethan was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, T cell type, and from the start he was on a respirator because he wasn't able to breathe because of the size of the tumor in his chest.
We made a promise right away, my husband and I, that we were going to do whatever it took, no matter what we had to sacrifice to have him be cancer-free. We actually, turned in both of our vehicles. I was driving my brother's car for a while. We did any kind of cuts we could to our household, changed services on things, removed services, just anything we could possibly think of, lived completely different than what we had lived before.
It has been extremely difficult, I had to leave my job to stay home with Ethan just because of all his treatments, making sure he doesn't get sick, trying to do the best that we can so he doesn't get a fever or whatever. Especially for Emily, being at that time about 12 and a half, it was very difficult for her to have her sibling go through this.
My daughter had a third grade teacher, several years ago named Jan Sutherland, and her brother-in-law is a very active Mason, Leon Richardson. He had met my daughter at the elementary school and gotten to know her, and I guess you're talking to Jan, his sister-in-law. They had thought about helping our family.
Janet Sutherland, my sister-in-law, told her who I was and what we were going to try to do. At that point, Emily started crying, and she hugged me and she said, "Thank you, Mr. Mason, for trying to help my brother."
I reached out for the Masons because I thought that the more help we could have, the better chance he had at fighting cancer.
At that point, I believe that God had them come right when they needed to. Things were falling apart, and they just walked in, and the timing was just unbelievable.
We decided at that point that we would have a meeting with the lodges in District 56 and approach the masters of the lodges and see what response we could get. And they, right from the very start, they were all very receptive to it.
Somebody brought up the question about what they thought we could do with a benefit dinner. We decided what we were going to do, and we went from there.
My understanding is that we had something over 500 guests, and in all, the total was raised something over $18,000. We even had people stop by that just give donations that didn't even stop to eat. Some of them ate and paid maybe double for their dinners even, just to help the cause. The Michigan Motorcycle Masonic Association also had a motorcycle ride. They raised a lot of money, and they also had probably 50 to 60 bikes. In addition to the money that the lodges raised, the Michigan Foundation also contributed money toward Ethan.
They will give us matching funds for any fundraiser that we do. And they did in Ethan's case. And it's just a great part of Masonry.
If the Masons hadn't come into our lives, we would probably honestly be living with one of our family members right now. We would have lost our house. There's no way that we would have been able to keep it and maintain everything else.
We didn't have to worry. We had so many other things to worry about, and it just took the whole financial thing away. They've pretty much saved our family.
If I never do anything in Masonry, again, this will be the moment I remember from my Masonic career. I'm just glad that they're a part of my life. They've helped me as much as I've helped them.
Thank you to the Masons for helping my children in the ways that they did. My son has his medical bills taken care of. I can't imagine what we would be doing if we did not have that happen. And our daughter has been able to continue to live in the house that she grew up in, go to the school where she attends, be around her friends in the neighborhood, and her lifestyle has not changed. And from the donations that were done by the Masons, that has all become possible.
The next story is that of longtime Mason Doug Jackson. After sharing a lifetime of happy memories, Doug's wife Pat was struck with debilitating Parkinson's disease. Faced with growing physical and financial challenges, Doug and his wife eventually chose to move to Masonic Pathways. Here is Doug's story.
Well, to begin with, in the 6th grade, Patsy Cousin was her name, and she came to United Oak School, which was my school. And she was a good-looking young lady, and, we were just kids. But I was very interested in her. I enlisted in the Air Corps, and I got into the pilot cadet training, the cadet program. When I got out of the service, I told my mother I wouldn't get married for a year or two, and 6 months later, Pat and I were married, and we lived in Detroit then. We had a gas station that my dad had. While in the gas station, I took one of my father's friends to lunch at the local bar, and we got talking about lodge, and he brought me in a petition the next day, and he brought my brother a petition. So my brother and I signed a petition. We joined lodge together. I went in lodge in '51, and I was very active in lodge the rest of my life. Eventually, Pat came down with Parkinson's. We had a sizable estate, but it gradually disappeared with Pat's expense and medications mainly. The social worker knew of my financial situation. I thought we'd never run out of money, but living in these homes for $5,000 a month private, he said, "You're going to run out of money." And he said, "You got to go somewhere." And the next time he called, I said, "I'm going to lodge." And he said, "What lodge?" And I said, "Masonic Lodge." He said, "You're a Mason?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "They have the best facility in the state." We moved up there. Pat was in a separate unit. I had my own room. And they took excellent care of Pat right up until the end. These two nurses that looked after her, I didn't do much in the room. We held hands and this, that, and the other thing. And this one nurse said, "Doug, you need to come to the room and, get a little emotional. You need to come to the room, climb in bed with her, and tell her you love her, and tell her it's all right just to give it up, just to let it go. She's a fighter, she's going to hang on." So I did that, and I whispered in her ear 5 or 6 times, "I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you." And she hadn't spoken in 2 months. And she said, I love you too. And that's the last I heard. And that was the end. And she died that night. When it was all said and done, the kid said, well, you're going to move back to Ann Arbor or Livonia. You'll be close to Whitechapel. You'll be close to your football. And I said, no, I found a home right here. This is my home. I've been a Mason for almost 60 years. I never dreamed that I would ever need a facility such as the Masonic Home, or Pathways as we call it today. I understand there's a big percentage of us that are on Masonic aid. I think that's what they call it. And without it, you know, we wouldn't be anywhere. It's a wonderful place to be. I love it and I appreciate what they do. There is love there.